In Elden Ring, damage matters a lot, considering that some of the endgame bosses go up to 42,000 HP, looking at you, Fire Giant, and the vast majority of your damage is determined by the level of your weapon, so taking away the upgrades of your weapon makes this game barely enjoyable at all. So I'm gonna answer the question that no one has ever asked and no one ever wants to ask, to be honest. Can you beat Elden Ring without upgrading your weapon? I'm gonna take you into the painful journey that took me multiple days and show you exactly what I did. Just don't do it yourself, please. To begin with, I chose Samurai because I wanted the bleed damage, and I chose a very important character that will make this entire run significantly easier, obviously. I jumped off the edge because I didn't want to fight the tutorial boss. And then I opened the door to the area that is gonna cause me immense agony for the next few days. I headed to Kali and sold my runes, then bought the crafting kits, the recipe books, and I cracked pots. I picked up the smithing stone that I'm never going to be using. Then I cleared the gate front ruins, because I needed to get the whetstone that is down here in order to use Ashes of War. I talked to Melina to get the horse. Then I headed over to Patch's cave to fight whatever his name is. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it. And then I spared Patches to return to him later so I can buy a gold foot or two. These gold foots are gonna come in handy when I fight bosses that drop a lot of runes. I opened the chest, headed to the Mistwood ruins, and then took all of the China lilies that are here. No.
No?
You were not supposed to wake up.
Because
These lilies will later be used in combination with mushrooms to make sleep pots, which I'm going to be taking a lot of advantage of in this run. Then I picked up the physics flask, took the grace, headed over to the recipe book, and headed over to the recipe book. The reason I kill Kenneth is simply for the golden seed, because he doesn't really have any other use. He's completely worthless. Then I rescued Borg, or at least pretended to, so he gives me some mushrooms. And then I headed to the north of Limgrave to kill this knight, because he gives me the golden power Ash of War, which I'm going to be heavily taking advantage of this run. After that I bought one more cracked pot, a short sword, and a recipe book, and the short sword I used for the golden vow. And with that I went to Margit, considering that I can't really upgrade my weapon, and I won't really be getting much stronger. This is a good time to talk about how damage works in this game, considering that some of you might not know it. As tested in this video here, you do around 4 times the damage of your weapon if you have it fully upgraded, in comparison to around 50 to 60% extra damage when you go from 20 to 99 instead. So needless to say, my damage will remain low for the entire playthrough. After that I went through the main gate and made my way to Godric. Maybe? There was no real point in doing anything else here aside from getting one dagger. The dagger in question is Misericord, which is the only dagger in the game that has 140 crit damage and will be used for basically every whistle I'm gonna do in this run. I picked up some more cracked pots, and then I headed to Godric's arena. Godric was very easy. It's usually not a difficult fight, and the low damage didn't make this any harder. The bleed carried me because he's ridiculously weak to bleed. Combined with Unsheath, it's a very easy and quick fight. After that I killed Gostok, so I have the bell bearing in case I ever want to buy the buckler. Otherwise his questline makes buying the buckler a little difficult. And also because he sucks and he should die. And then I bought the lantern, made my way to the academy key. Bought some jellyfish over blood grease. Went to Rael Lucario and at the Iron Maiden Kelly, and then attempted to kill Noble. Outskin Noble this early on is particularly difficult. What ended up working for me was a mix between Sleep Pots, Bleed on my Uchigatana, especially with Blood Grease, Unsheath, and just a lot of luck. It was a very painful fight that took a relatively long time, but in the end defeating him gave me around 50,000 runes and put me one step closer to Rykard and a weapon that I really wanted to get that was gonna carry most of the playthrough. At least I thought it would. The weapon I'm talking about is the Serpent Hunter, a very strong weapon with extremely good scaling even at +0 and very high base damage. And I figured since I'm already here I could attempt to kill Rykard with a +0. I mean, I'm gonna have to kill 2 Shotbearers anyways, so I went for it and tried to kill Rykard. It was honestly not that bad for the +0. Surprisingly, the damage was okay. I only died a few times, and then at the end, I managed to even interrupt and prevent the Skull Rain with a +0 and like 20 strength. So Raikat is definitely a good shot bearer to kill early. After the high of killing Raikat, I decided to put myself down a little bit and attempted to kill the Crucible Knights, the 10 of spawns.
Yeah, this is gonna go really well for you, I'm sure. Dude.
I picked up the talisman pouch, then headed over to Khaled. There was no real reason to kill this NPC, but I just wanted to get the sacred tier. Then I killed the invisible scarab for Flame of the Red Mane, which will be the most important Ashraf war in the entire run. It is genuinely a game changer. I picked up the Star Scourge heirloom. It wasn't necessary, but it was definitely helpful, and then I tried to make my way back, but I kind of forgot about the giant boulders that are being shot at me. I picked up the first half of the Dectus Medallion and the Radagon Saw Seal. And just to show you how strong Flame of the Red Mane really is, it's very strong. It does a lot of damage, and most importantly, it does 29 poise damage, which is ridiculously high. It's the equivalent of a fully charged heavy attack. On top of a very fast casting animation that also moves outwards and is therefore like a ranged arc. It's very strong. And I decided to go and test its limits immediately by fighting the Dragon Barrow Tree Spirit. The reason for fighting this one is because it gives a ton of runes and it gives 2 really good crystal tiers. And what can I say? It took 3 casts to stun, and it was very easy. Then I went and picked up the other half of the Dectus Medallion, collected some more sacred tears around Weeping Peninsula and Limgrave. In total, I got my flask to oh my god. In total, I got my flask to +5. And then because we killed 2 shard bearers, I made my way to Draconic Tree Sentinel. It was absolute agony. This fight in casual runs is really not that bad, but once you have to actually learn the pattern, it's a very difficult fight. Halfway through, I went into the abandoned cave in Khaled to get myself the Poison Claw. I used it, it didn't really do much though. But then I finally had my winning attempt. Oh my god, the attack was almost hitting me. I took the Grace and made my way through the capital. Nothing worth mentioning here, aside from the fact that Godfrey was actually kind of easy. I have a lot of experience with the fight, so the Shade version is even simpler because no Horalu, which is the only terrifying thing about the fight. But the damage was already starting to drop off drastically. At this point, I was needing to fight the fight for like 5 or 6 minutes. I defeated him and got the next talisman pouch. And after that, it was time for Morgott, one of my favorite fights in the game. Morgott is always a ton of fun to fight, and this time was no exception. My damage was low, the fight took around 7 minutes, but it was still extremely enjoyable, and I don't know, it's just an amazing fight, definitely one of the best ones in the game. After defeating him, he surprisingly had one more special attack left that I've never seen before. He made my game just completely die. I have never seen this before, and it was lagging like absolute crazy. There was nothing I could do, so I had to restart the game, and turned out I had to update it as well in order to fix it. Luckily, it didn't end the run though, and I didn't have to refight Morgott. And then I hit my first actual big wall that was gonna make me completely regret starting this run, Fire Giant. I cannot even put into words how frustrating this fight is, especially if you have to fight him for 10 to 15 minutes. And I don't know, I just learned to hate this fight even more than I already did. There was a lot of agony in this fight, a lot of situations where I was fighting him for literally 10 minutes and just died at the end. Stop rolling, please. Stop rolling, please. Please just stop rolling.
Oh man, there's a lot of pain in your voice.
I want to die. So halfway through the attempts, I decided to go to Shaded Castle and fight the NPC. She drops you a Scarlet Rod Rapier, and it is one of the only reliable Scarlet Rod sources I can have at the moment. So I went and took her down, which was surprisingly easy. It doesn't really matter what he damages against NPCs most of the time. I'm gonna regret saying that later. And together with the Scarlet Rod, the attempts went much further.
That's
I am so fucking unhappy.
Oh no!
I'm I'm done for the day, I'll do this tomorrow. But I still died. And then I died again. Please take down. No, it stopped.
Does it stop when you die? Oh my god. Are you
Stop,
good?
what is he doing? He's fucking playing the bongos, dude. Oh. Oh. I'm so terrified, man. Please.
Are you?
Yes. Oh. Wow. What I didn't know is after Fire Giant, things only got worse. Much, much worse. Next up was Godskin Duo. I knew this fight was gonna be bad. I didn't know it was gonna be this bad. I basically had no idea what to do in the beginning. So after some thinking, I went back to Ryo Lucario. I killed Red Wolf of Radagon and Renala, because my goal was to respec into Reduvia. Renala was, as always, very easy. She staggers extremely quickly, especially from the Serpent Hunter. And with the amount of health I had at this point, it was not a big deal. The one thing I didn't think about, in order to respec, I will need a level tier. And I have not done anything to get those yet, so I thought that the easiest way would be going into Nokron. And in order to go into Nokron, I had to go and kill Radahn. So I made my way over to Radahn, which was surprisingly also a relatively easy fight. They really didn't need to nerf him whatsoever. And then I fought the Mimic Tier. Mimic Tier was honestly the hardest boss in the game. I'm gonna give the Mimic Tier a Jelly Shield. Nothing else, just the Jelly Shield.
I have no idea. Huh?
He actually does damage. He keeps buffing.
How?
It actually did damage, dude. What the fuck?
I mean, he's just buffing non-stop.
Yeah, you're really showing me, buddy. Do it again.
Uh-huh.
And after defeating Mimic Tier, I had collected a total of around 5 to 6 level tiers. So that's all I needed, I thought at least, until the end of the run. With that, I went back and respec'd into Arcane and Dexterity, and then tried to use Reduvia against Godskin Duo. To sum up, I don't know, multiple hours of attempts, it was not worth it and it did absolutely nothing, and I wasted a lot of time. So I had to think of a different theory or different strategy again. And the next thing I came up with was Scarlet Rot and Sleep. I made myself Scarlet Rot and Sleep arrows and then went over to Castle Morn. I had another theory from a previous video of mine that could potentially work, so I went over to Edgar and asked him to lend me his weapon. He was very kind. Then I went into whatever this dungeon is called. I mean, they all look the same, so I really have no idea. But in this dungeon you can get the Scythe, which has innate bleed damage, and you can put spinning strikes on it. And then, together with the banished halberd that I got and the Scythe, I was able to put a spin to win build. So my plan was now to sleep them, put bleed on my weapon, and then try and spin and win them to death. It definitely was better, but it was not enough. Not even in the slightest. So, for the next 3 hours I continued to struggle, trying to find a strategy that would somehow make this doable. There were a lot of deaths that were honestly really unfair, but I mean, this fight is just dog shit. If I had a way to skip it, I would've, but in order to skip this fight you have to kill Malenia, and I really don't want to do that with my upgrades.
Become sub.
So what I ended up doing in the end is, I ended up inflicting Scarlet Rot on the first one and then sleeping him. After I've done that successfully, I did the same to the other one, and then before the first one woke up again, I went up to him and helicoptered him. Once he was transitioning into phase 2, I threw a sleep pod at him, and then waited for him to sleep again, and at that point I could bleed him again. And then I just repeated that for both of them over and over again. It sounds very easy on paper, but it really wasn't. It still took me a few hours, because the more you do it, the more resistant they become to both bleed and sleep, and Scarlet Blood. So in the end it took me around, I think, 20 or something sleep arrows just to sleep them once, and they didn't bleed at all anymore. So it really just became more tedious as the fight went on, which is the main reason why I failed a lot of very close attempts. But with enough perseverance, I ended up getting through. It was just extremely painful and not fun at all.
Oh my god, you do so little damage. It's so bad.
That was fucking... Oh my god, dude, that was so disgusting. Never again, please.
You didn't enjoy?
No, I did not enjoy. I went back to Renella to respec once again into Strength, because I was thinking that the Serpent Hunter would be a very good choice against Malekith. It was not. I was doing like 200 damage on the charged attack, and that was just not enough. So I went out of my way to go and collect some talismans, like the Repose talismans, and then I changed my build up to Flame of the Redmane. Now my strategy was to cast Flame of the Redmane 3 times, and then switch to my Misericord and do the Visceral. That way I'm gonna get healed, and I'm gonna get FP back, and I can stagger him in literally just 3 casts. So I kept repeating this over and over, and it actually made the fight very easy. Like, Flame of the Redmane is very broken. And then here's the build in case you're curious. I was also using the Dagger Talisman I picked up previously, and I was using the talisman that makes your weapon mods do less, or cost less. So here I am in Ashen Capital. I made it to the endgame with no upgrades, but this was only just the beginning, because until this point it took me maybe like 5 hours, and then the rest of the playthrough took double that. Like, it was horrendous. And believe it or not, the hardest boss in the entire run was Ofnir. It made me want to Ofnir myself. I tried absolutely everything on this dude. I tried to use the spin to win helicopter combo, I tried using spinning chain, I tried using bleed, I tried using scarlet rod, I tried using just absolutely everything I have. And nothing worked. The combination of stacking spells, of having this disgusting shield around him that explodes if you do too much damage to him, of being able to panic roll and just back off over and over again, and then just spam me down with spells, and especially those fucking discs, I fucking hate them. But all of that combined just made this fight extremely unbearable, and I had no idea what to do. I seriously didn't. It made me pause for a few days, and I still believe that the only reason I beat him in the end was because of pure luck. I even went out of my way to get carry in retaliation, and I tried to parry the spells. None of it worked, because most of the spells you can't even parry properly. But I had one more idea for a secret weapon. I made my way to Weeping Peninsula, and I killed Valk. Valk has a spear. I believe it's the only weapon in the game that can proc madness, and Ofnir is weak to madness. So by getting the spear, I could have used the fact that Ofnir gets proc with madness very quickly. Usually it only takes 1 or 2 weapon mods. So after that I respec to be able to use the weapon, and then I tried it again. It was very good. 1 cast was enough to proc it most of the time until he became more resistant to it, and it was doing around 1000 every time it procced. But it was just not good enough. The fight continued to be painful, the spells continued to overlap and just give me no chance, and I just kept dying over and over and over again. In the beginning I also inflicted myself with madness until I switched my armor pieces, and it was just the least amount of fun you can have in this game. Did I mention that he can pretty much fully heal by the way?
Oh shit.
But then I finally had this one attempt where I was able to roll catch him every single time and to prevent the heal. I was nowhere near any of that. And then I got it. Yes!
Oh, you did it?
Oh, finally.
Hell yeah, boy. Fuck
Wow.
that guy.
That was the worst thing so far, my fucking god. I do want to point out that I did also try the Albonaric pots, and it didn't work. Like, it prevented him from healing for like 10 seconds, but that's about all it did. And then after that it was time for Godfrey. The damage on Godfrey was absolutely pathetic. I was doing 50 damage. Seriously, there was no way I was gonna do it. So I went back to Flames of the Redmane and my dagger setup. It was very difficult to cast the Flame of the Red Mane, because many of his attacks just caught me in the middle of it, but it was definitely much more effective than dealing 50 damage with my Serpent Hunter. The Riposte was dealing around 600, and I did end up getting to Horror once.
That's what I want to see. Uh-oh.
But then I had the idea of inflicting him with Scarlet Rods before doing anything, and because of all of the animations and second phase where you just have to stand back and kind of watch, I decided to implement a bow. So in the first phase I was proccing Scarlet Rod. I also procced Bleed once, I believe, but it's not really worth mentioning. And then I continued with Flames of the Red Mane. And then in the second phase I spent a lot of time proccing Scarlet Rods, but once I had it down it was basically game over from there. I then, whenever I had the chance to, spam Bleed Arrows with the Barrage Ash of Woe, and then Flames of the Red Mane carried me to the end. It was a relatively easy fight, just proccing Scarlet Rod is extremely difficult. And with Horror down, we're heading towards the last two bosses, Radagon and Elden Beast. At this point, I was convinced I'm gonna be getting the run. I knew these two were gonna be difficult, but once I actually jumped into it, I started to realize just how bad it is actually gonna be. Radagon does not have a lot of health, and 3 casts is enough to stun him, so my build was actually working. That was not the issue, because whenever you riposte someone with the Talisman, you get FP, which are equivalent to 3 casts of Flames of the Red Mane. So as long as I can stagger him in 3, I'm fine. He was very difficult, because he's always very difficult, he's a very difficult fight, and there was a lot of learning to do because I've never really had to fight him in a way like this, so I'm gonna skip all of the learning attempts in the learning curve. Once I finally had a really good attempt and beat Radagon, I got to Elden Beast and I could see what I was in for. I was doing 65 damage to Elden Beast, not to mention that stunning him would take 4 casts after my Crystal Tear runs out, which is an issue because, like I said, I can only restore 3, so I'm gonna be using FP without being able to fully restore it, and considering that a Visceral does 600, while this boss has like, I don't know, maybe like 20-30,000 HP, yeah, I don't think that's gonna happen. On top of a lot of the attacks being rather annoying, I need a lot of healing, so I really didn't know what to do at this point. Except there was one more secret weapon that I was planning on using. I wanted to avoid it if possible, but it is in the game and it is a thing that I can use on no upgrades, so I decided to prepare for it. The first thing I did for that was do various quests so I can get to Mogwant's Palace. In here I cheesed him by using the Mog's Shackle I got from the underground. The Shackle was very easy to get, and all you have to do for the cheese is use it 3 times in front of the fog gate and then immediately go in. It's very easy, it works on Margit as well, and it might work on Morgit, I'm not sure. I fought him mainly for the runes, and then I backtracked in the area just to get to the beginning of it, because here's a glitch that you can do by climbing the rocks that allows you to jump off the map and kill everything on the map. And then by traveling back, you get around 160,000 runes every single time. I repeated the Skyrim climb for about an hour because I needed 4 million runes, and then I ended up having enough to get to level 147, which was enough to have 80 int, around 50 vigor, and around 40, actually 30 might I think. Either way, my build was starting to be really good. And then I went and got the Academy Scroll, so I can buy the Great Glintstone Pebble. I also picked up the armor set from Rogier. And then the build I was going for in the end, as you can see here, was the Meteorite Staff. The Meteorite Staff is kind of like a cheat, that's why I didn't want to use it. I could have been using it for the entire run, but I was only going to use it for things that I actually needed. It is a staff that has an S scaling and intelligence from the get-go, and it cannot be upgraded. But because it cannot be upgraded, it's already very good when you get it. It's an insanely good early game stuff, but it drops off very harshly towards the end. But for me it was enough because anything is better than dealing 60 damage. With this build, with Great Glintstone Pebble and with Rocksling, I was dealing actually okay damage against both bosses. I was hitting for like 200 or 300 on Radagon, and then with a properly timed Rocksling, I was hitting for 700 on Elden Beast. It was not good, but honestly I was taking anything at this point. So I was just happy to finally see the health bar move. Both of them together still took around 15 minutes. It was a very long fight and I had to be careful with both FP and heals. I ended up consuming all of my flasks in the end, so it did end up being very close. But the attempt you're seeing right now is the attempt that ended up making it. So what ended up doing the trick for me was a mix between Flames of the Red Mane, Misericord, Rocksling, Meteorite Staff, Glintstone Pebble, Golden Vow, and Serpent Hunter. That's honestly all I was using. Combined with the red talismans, which were really easy to pick up, some rune farming, and then Rogier's armor set. My damage was actually okay. and it was enough to finish the run. So overall, yes, you can beat Elden Ring without upgrading your weapon. It is just not very fun and no one should do it. This was the first video of this kind of style. I really enjoyed it. It was a ton of work. So if you want to see more and if you enjoyed it, then I would definitely appreciate if you could show me by leaving a like or maybe even subscribing. I'm planning to do more of this in the future because there's many runs I want to do and many runs that other people have done, but I want to try myself. So if you want to see more videos like this, then I would gladly do that, but just let me know. Yay! There we go. No upgrade run.
Good shit.
Oh,
Holy fuck, man.
that was fucking...
We did it.
Holy shit. I don't ever want to do that again.
That looked really fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. Wow, put me on the fucking throne and get me out of this misery. And with that being said, enjoy the end of the video and enjoy my character being on the throne. And thank you for watching. Yeah, dude, absolutely nothing is upgraded except for the banished halberd that I didn't use. And I picked it up, so... Feels good, man.